Boa tarde a todos, todas e todos.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Victor, responsible for Observatório SPCine, the organizer of this event, the first SPCine Forum, the agenda for the recovery of the audiovisual. Now we're going to talk about games in XR. I call Simone Clias, our mediator. Rodrigo Terra, representing Abra Games. Erika Caramello, CEO from Dixo. George Groove, representing XRBR. And Silvana Bahia, representing Olabi. Before I pass the floor to Simone, I would like to remind the audience and those who are watching through YouTube, we have a QR code for questions that you can send. And on YouTube, we have a link on the description and a good panel to all of you. Simone, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I was just passing the last instructions. It's a great pleasure, Victor, and everyone from SPCine. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Simone Clias. I'm founder from XRBR, together with Groove. Now I'm vice president of the association, and I'm going to mediate this panel, which is quite interesting, of games and extended reality. And the conclusion that we want to reach is that games and extended reality are an integral part of audiovisual. I'd like to thank Iaria, everyone from SPCine, and also congratulate we are here also to collect information, to have an agenda for SPCine. It's a panel that will have its continuity, so congratulations for the work you have been developing. I thank all of the audience that is here, and for those of you at home, you can also participate, sending your questions to our dear panel members, Erika Caramello, Silvana Bahia, Jorge Groove, and Silvano Terra. We will now present our speakers. Terra, please present yourself and describe yourself, please. My name is Rodrigo Terra, co-founder of Afro Immersive. I'm president of Abra Games and co-founder from Extended Reality. I am a white male with a black t-shirt, using jeans. I'm a tall guy and I intend to be fun. Hello everyone, my name is Erika Caramello, CEO of Dixo Games, a company that has a link between the base of the gaming industry and independent studios, together with the market, media and events, and also prospecting for the market for these people that are in the base of the industry to maintain their studios. I'm also a teacher from FATEC. I teach gaming for over a decade. I'm a white female with red hair. I'm wearing jeans and a black blouse. And it will be a pleasure to be here as part of this panel talking to you during this afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is George Groove. I am founder of Icompixes, audiovisual in 3D and animation, and one of the founders of XRBR. I am a black male. I am wearing a white shirt and jeans, and I have dreadlocks. I am medium height, and it will be a great pleasure to be here talking about all these subjects that will establish new public policies. Good afternoon. My name is Silvana Bahia, People call me Sil Bahia. I'm a black woman. I have the painted hair. I'm wearing a green-yellow blouse. I'm wearing jeans. And I'm from Rio de Janeiro. I'm 36 years old. I'm a bit overweight. And I'm executive co-director of Colabi that works for the democratization of technologies to stimulate also the innovation field for black women. I have already directed documentaries. I have been an actress as well. I'm a curious person and a fighter for the rights of people. An activist of dreams. My name is Simone Clias. As I mentioned, I'm one of the founders and current vice president. Terra was the former vice president of XRBR. I also do dubbing. I began as an actress. I have circulated here at Centro Cultural a lot. I'm a announcer as well. And as Terra is going to talk about, I'm a white female. I'm smaller than Erika. I am wearing white trousers and a colored blouse. I have blonde hair and medium to long hair. And that would be it. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here. And as I mentioned, I'm in audiovisual since 9 years old. And 6 years ago, I discovered XR. What is XR? Who here doesn't know what is XR is? It's normal not to know. XR is an umbrella term for augmented and virtual and extended reality. So very summed up, that applies digital instruments in our virtual reality. Pokemon Go is a great example. On the other side, we have the virtual reality where the user is totally immersed in a world that is totally digital through goggles and apart from the real world. This is very summed up. So if you have any doubts, we can explain this further. But how is this market of XR today? I have brought you some data. According to Forbes, 75% of the brands, most valuable brands, has already invested in AR, VR. So this is nothing new. The virtual and augmented reality have the potential for $1.35 million up to 2030. How is the gaming market in Brazil? According to Gaming Brazil research, 74.5% of the Brazilians play games, which represents an increase of 2.5% in relation to former year. The cellular is the main platform for players. Regarding exports, the industry of gaming development has been growing over 2 digits a year. In 2020, it grew 16.39% during the pandemic. So we're talking about two very large markets. Games is even larger than XR, and there is an intersection of games and XR. There's a lot to be seen, and despite all the numbers that I've mentioned, many times XR and gaming are not considered audiovisual, but they are. So working with communication, as Yara mentioned in our meeting, is working with several platforms that connect to each other and converge into each other. So thinking about the audiovisual, including gaming and XR, is essential because this will increase our spectrum of work, labors, and new narratives that are possible as well. That's why it's so important to talk about this subject. I'm going to give some examples of these platforms, and I'll begin our first round. So MC presented itself in Onda Sonora, Fortnite, and according to Fiochi, it was the largest media platform of Emicidia. So during 72 hours he was available. It's an experience/show within this platform with global reach, and here in Brazil this experience was shown at Cinemark Room. Spotify opened an interactive space and launched Batman in cinema. In São Paulo, we had Color Ride that uses a car as a platform for virtual experience and geolocalization. We're going to talk more about this because they participate on this. These are some examples of convergence, and these are very recent examples, just to illustrate how integrated we are. So let us begin with the first round with Terra, that today came with the hat of Abra Games, but he is an example of integration of languages. Terra, you began in traditional audiovisual, then you migrated to other formats. How does the audiovisual industry can be more inclusive in regards to these new technologies, and also to have more audience? I think to answer this question, I'm going to talk about the history of Ivory. That for me is a great example of lots of convergence. I'm radialist, formed in comunicação social. I came here from the TV, so I began my culture, and I began in backstage, not in production, but in operations. Way back then, in which the people that work with cameras and video man, etc., illumination, lighting. So I wanted, at the beginning of my career, I wanted to understand how it works inside. Until we get to reach people's homes through the signal, we were passing through the digitalization. We were going to HD. Digital TV didn't exist until yet, and today the broadcast TV are content producers due to the expansion of these new formats, and so TV is now a format and not a means, a communication means. But I've always been a gamer. I have been playing since the 1900s, so to speak, and I also played the clone in the 80s, and I've always seen these means, and Ivory came from a desire and a frustration at the same time, the will to tell stories in which we were not stuck to 1, 2, or 3 formats, and that nothing could stop me if I wanted to build an active story or a passive story. So I began my career always delivering content to people's houses in a passive way, but the computer, internet, that didn't exist, all of that. There was something very new at the time that was called YouTube, and then I would say, this is something that is going to be the future. Forget what we're learning now. This is the new television. No, that's never going to happen. That's the answers that I got. It's going to take a lot of time. Video is not good. Audio is not even solved. A year later, Google purchased it. The rest is history. In 2015, the same thing happened. I had my first business, which was a production company, together with my brother, and I had the opportunity of experimenting the developer kit 1 of Oculus. which is owned by Facebook currently. And I tried that thing again. I had already tried out virtual reality sometimes in virtual Loy in the 90s. But when I took that in my hands, I thought, I think this is the next frontier. Not only the next frontier of the audiovisual itself, but streaming was already on the run. And I said, well, I think now I'm able to go into gaming. I've always wanted to work with games, trying to put games within our productions. I didn't think gaming was another universe. It's within audiovisual. We just have to reassess what is audiovisual and expand the concept of audiovisual that will encompass other meanings. And now we are talking about immersion, then metaverse, and we're having new senses in a way to do storytelling. But the mediatic arts and expositions and other formats and content to do this already, well, when we think about convergence, we think about that all of these formats can be put together, perhaps in a experience package using the technology we had. And then we founded Ivory in 2017. At the time, we didn't know if it was an audio-visual company, if it was a technology startup, or something that didn't have a name. And we started to understand that we could have the space that we wanted to create for our games. The first game we released was Pixel Ripped, which is we have a great game designer that participate in the genesis of this of our company, game development and game design. We have the first award that we won was Japan Media Arts Festivals. So they understand in Japan that all of TV's expositions and other means are audiovisual, and we won our very first prize, and it was recognized as an innovation. So following, we're advancing in exploring this hybrid of what is a narrative and a game, immersive, what is cinema, what is a short film. We released A Linha, which was an immersive reality, about 15 minutes. You can stay longer if you want to explore the whole environment. And this was one of the great learnings that we had with Linha 99. It's an experience that cannot be said that if it's a short film or a game. It's a game or not? No, it's neither. It's an immersive narrative experience. It could only be come from the will of storytelling. So together with Barbara Paz, it was the first time that Brazil won a Venetian Lion. This was the first time that Brazil received an award, and this award within the film festival with a virtual reality piece. The ending of this story, different than the Emmy, Primetime Emmy is a competition between many actors, Gaston Cut, and we thought that we were at high stakes. And A Linha was contemplated with an Emmy, and closing this award story, more recently we had Yuki, which is our game that was released last year, game focused in breaking gender barriers with bullet helking, together with experience with virtual reality. Thank you. Well, we talked to machines as well. I was going over my time. So, and Yuki was the moment in which we were able to learn about the basis that we had in our company. So Alinha was directed by one of our co-founders, and he was developing immersive storytelling and bringing the corporified narrative. Remember, I talked about senses. How do we take the body, into the gaming, and the game to the body? Well, Microsoft tried to launch Kinect. Nintendo launched Y, and this was nothing new. It's when we understood that this would have to be a part of building a immersive narrative, because our games have to have the body involved, because in virtual reality you walk through space, so to speak, a virtual space, and you use your body to navigate. So Yuki was one of the finalists. We didn't win the award in the DICE Awards, which is one of the largest awards for interactive arts in the United States. We were finalists together with other projects and games, and the last Brazilian was Mobile Dandara, which is a fantastic game, and that gives a good idea of how we have to bring diversity. So Árvore was based on the diversity of backgrounds, of life stories. Ana Maranhense, she left the public sector to seek her game. She became an entrepreneur. She had to start all over again. She lost everything. And other stories that we have within Árvore makes us look and see how we could think this new audiovisual, especially in a world where the convergence is old. Films, gaming, TV, you can choose if you're going to play, if I'm going to watch a series. So in this world that we live now, that we cannot no longer talk about convergence, but post-digital, we wanted to think how to break the next frontier, which is the physical space. Virtual reality already does this, so with mixed and augmented reality, we'll bring new games. Excellent. He had 10 minutes and he stuck to the time. And that's it. So look at what Árvore is producing, because they're exploring all of these possibilities that we have and others that will arise in this post-digital era. And it's a great way for us to follow the evolution of our market and this thinking out of the box. Let me talk about post-digital. This concept is not new, but it's not because it comes after digital, because we have to understand our world as being different level of perceptions of reality. So our physical world, there are infinite possibilities of simulations that can be created with anything that is connected and that has a processing capacity. We have to understand our reality of a sum of this. We can talk about metaverse later. What we're talking about is that there's the layers of the metaverse. This is food for thought later on. And now we're going to talk to Silvana. We talked about diversity. So tell us a little bit about your experience. Well, thinking about technology and audiovisual, all these other possibilities of thinking narratives through other technologies in the digital world that is more available now to all of us. I think we go through some problems now thinking about this market and these spaces, which is the lack of narrative diversity. We are used to listening to the same stories or looking or seeing always the same people telling the same stories. So from some time that has been changing due to technology. Producing has become more accessible, especially for those that are not embedded or in the audiovisual industry. So what does this mean? Cinema, television, audiovisual, until we had this technology. It's the guardian of us, the culture of a society. It talks about this, and my relationship with audiovisual begins 12 years ago when I perceived the storytelling and which stories are told. In 2015, I was a part of the Cabela, which was a film directed by a friend of mine, together with Bruno F. Duarte, and then we were challenged, I'm talking about 10 years ago, to set up a technical team that would reflect Brazil. And what I mean is mostly women and black people. I remember at the time there was a study from GEMA that I wanted to name GEMA, which is Affirmative Action Multidisciplinary Group, and this research told that the films that had the greatest box offices from 2016 only 4% of the cast had the participation of black people or black women, and none of them had black women as screenwriters. It's important to say that 50% of the population of Brazil are women or black, and why are we not present telling these stories? And I was forced to make myself to assemble a group, a team of over 90% women and 90% black people. And some years later, we were going to make a platform called Afrofix. It is a little outdated, but we had the desire to hack Netflix and thinking about the distribution of audiovisual, because at the time we had the support to think about production, but when the films were ready and to subscribe or to participate in festivals, if you don't have the knowledge, if you're not in a production company, you can't advance in this. So Afrofix had this criteria that was to have one producer black producer participating. And looking at diversity as something that is more central within these narratives and not only as something that is specific. Let's let other people take care of this. I think we are at a moment of experiencing different things that can be very powerful for us to understand ourselves as a country, and also to learn to bring other memories that many times are underground, then that have to emerge somehow. And I think these tools are extremely important when we get a hold of them. There's some data from 2016 from Mancini. I was doing a research to have some data available that says that black people in audiovisual represent 2.5% of directors and screenwriters, and only black men are within this percentage, no black women. I have a group of friends, women, that created a production company named Quilomba, made by black women. And I think, well, these people weren't contacted by this research. How are these researches being done? So they have to be improved. I think we have a great challenge ahead of us, which is complex, but also a great opportunity to look at this and bring everything to the same grounds. As was mentioned, all these new technologies and these new things that we can have with other narratives, but also this diversification of actors and players of these productions. And what can we do to develop the innovation in the market, but also ensuring this democratization? I think there is no silver bullet, Simone. I think there's no direct answer for this. What we can do is recognizing that this is a problem, first of all, and truly recognizing this, that this lack of diversity is a problem because it doesn't reflect the country in which we live in. And there's a phrase that I like a lot that says, if we repeat the same way we've always done things, our results will be excluded, will be racists and so forth, because we are repeating the structure, the current structure. So what we have to do is create policies to insert these people in the market, not only as consumers of audiovisual, but as producers of audiovisuals, to have the training and the skills. So there are several levels to be thought of what can be done, but I'm sure what we cannot do is to keep on ignoring this and thinking everything is all right. And how do we work with intention within this sector, within this industry? We work with intent when we create spaces for this diversity to appear. First, look at your team, your production team for a film. How many black people do you have here? How many women do you have here? This is a questioning that we must do constantly, because we are educated in this society that is so unequal racially, and we are taught to ignore this. And I think as we learn things, we have to unlearn things as well. There is the pandemic brought this reflection upon us. So we can learn new things. It's like emptying a hard drive to put in new things. So we have to reinvent ourselves. We talk about innovations, new technologies, but innovation comes through a new point of view. If we always do the things that we've done, it's very difficult to innovate. And innovation is not to reinvent the wheels, but to remix a wheel, taking different knowledges and making other bridges to reach other places. Excellent. I have an eye on Terra and on the work that you're doing, because is to ensure an open spaces for black and women. Congratulations. We're going to hear more from you. Now, George Groove, a multi-artist that is here today, that is wearing the hat of XRBR. But as our other panel members, he is in the audiovisual industry for a long time. Share with us a little bit of your experience and how you see the development of XR content within our Brazilian market. Okay. Well, talking a little bit about my experience, I think it's nice to say things from my beginning. I began drawing at 5 years old, and I used to draw a lot. I took any kind of paper, and I would draw and draw. I'd give the drawings away as a present. I wanted to pass the ideas that I had in my mind. And with time, When I was about 15, I went to work in audio studios, first as assistant, technician, and I started doing production for several artists. And automatically, I went into the audiovisual industry. I worked a lot for producers, production companies, and also for broadcast TV, global network. With audiovisual, I was able to pass on what I had in mind. And all of a sudden, 3D arrived in my life, and that was an explosion for me. I was able to have fixed and in 3D, I didn't have this limitation anymore. So it was a changing point that was quite significant for me. And a little bit later, virtual reality came along. And for me, it was the highlight. I couldn't show only what was in my mind, but I was able to put people within my thoughts. That's the power of XR. And today I see XR in Brazil in a great advancement. I see that there are many more investments than 4 years ago. I see that companies and industries are investing. And I see also that many companies, even not having the knowledge or the idea of what is the metaverse, they want to participate because they see that everything is converging towards this. So I see this with pink glasses, and we no longer have a definition of what is film and what is game. I feel we're in a great spot right now because we are in a transitional moment to something that we don't know exactly what is going to be. The devices that we have, the headsets, everything is being transformed. There aren't predefined models anymore. So I see with a lot of curiosity and with a lot of joy because it is a great transformation. So I think that would be it.
I love your enthusiasm. Those who are able to work with these new devices of this new frontier really gets enchanted, because we're here to understand a little bit of the agenda. What would be the main challenges today for XR here in Brazil today? Well, I would say that the main challenges would be first access. We see that equipment and devices are really costly, both for developers and for users. We need those pieces of equipment that are really expensive, not only headsets, but also machines. You need 2 machines to develop this work. So I would say that this is the main challenge. The second challenge is the lack of skilled workers to be able to develop these works. We need a studio, well-equipped studios to carry out the work. I believe that this question of lack of professionals limit our activity. I believe we should have more skilled workers to make all this feasible. Also wish more young people and students and others would have more access to these costly equipment. I want you to remind one name called Amaya, which is an animation film for TV. This is from Bárbara Guimarães, a black woman filmmaker. It's a beautiful story. There was a problem, which was that professionals that were hired were not fully prepared. And we tried to solve this problem because, of course, I did not have resources to hire more animators, which was necessary. After discussing, created what we call NetCine, which is the Black Cinema Center, a place where Black people and poor people would train, would have skills, and that would place that they would learn their major skills, and also a place where they could tell their own stories, the stories of their ascendants, and everything according to their own view and vision, not from others. I believe this is crucial in order to change this course. Well, we have a video from SPCine who shared a survey with us. The survey says and shows how we lose money without representativeness. It is important in all spectrum, including the financial aspect. We have to think today about diversity and inclusion at all fields. Before we give the floor to Eric, I'd like to know from you what kind of professional work at XR, which would be augmented reality and virtual reality, and what kind of professionals work in XR, and what kind of people are associated with your company, which is XRBR. Well, I see that all fields are intertwined. I see the same professionals there in audiovisual, on television, and on cinema. You have dubbing people, screenwriters, all sorts of professionals. They work there, but they're also into XR. They are the professionals that make up XRBR, which is the Association of Professionals and Companies that work with extended reality. We have all these professionals that are with us actively working in this production chain of audiovisual, including XR. You involve professionals from other areas as well. Well, thank you. And in a short while, you are going to be back. Well, what's the name that the film animation Anaya with an N? Don't forget, she's XRBR and his president. Now I have the honor to talk to Erika Caramello. Erika, you're going to be talking about games, XR, but and give it a different view. You're going to focus on the academy most of all, and tell us a little bit of your challenges, what you see, and what you've been working at. I work with independent market because of academic necessity. I've always worked with technology, and one thing leads to the other, and I ended up working with games, which was not a possibility at the time I did my degree, university degree. What I see now is a migration of several professionals from different areas to the area of games. I see a lot of enthusiasm and interest, both from information technology and other areas. What we see is that we have this trial and error resources. And we do not have in Brazil well-trained and well-equipped professionals. Today we have them, but I'm talking about with all the skills that the industry makes available. The advancement of technology is much faster than what the academy can reach. It is difficult to find courses of digital games to offer this kind of courses on digital games, because I've been teaching for a long time in public universities, and like one may imagine, you have people from poor origins studying at public universities. And sometimes we lack quality equipment so that they can produce good games. The software licenses, as you know, are very expensive. Also, these same students don't have a good perspective in working in this labor market. They come from a fringe kind of reality. It's difficult to produce big AAA games, which are the famous console games. There is now a company that's working with it now in Brazil, but we are not able to do the whole game, just part of it. So we notice that there are several steps for people to move on, people who come from public universities mainly. And here comes my work. I did a doctor's degree, and I studied how to make Brazilian game industry to gain international visibility. What I noticed is that young people's narratives are kind of the same, because you have a Eurocentric view of narratives, because that's what we learn in our university courses. The more we study, the more you read European authors, and the majority of them, and authors from other countries which are advanced in technology. Nonetheless, we can promote innovation based on grassroots views, just like Sue has commented here. So we do this by trial and error to see what it is possible or not. I'm very proud to coming out of my doctor's degree and opening a company that's working with grassroots professionals. Sometimes they cannot find a place in well-known game studios, and they have their own narratives. They want to convey their narratives. Diversity is something that I've been focusing for a long time. I'm one of the first women in this kind of industry. I'm part of the Abra Games board, and I do that because I want to build together and bring innovation for the Brazilian games industry based on our essence, because we do have a very rich culture, music, filmmaking, which is visible even outside of Brazil, as well as games. Nonetheless, we find it very difficult to break this bubble. Of course, today we have streaming and other digital platforms, and they allow people to show the work, and that's very good, because we are seeing more and more talents revealed all over the country. Well, the work that you carry out is really nice. When you think about this diversity, we see diversity in teams, and not only racial identity and regional diversity, but also diversity of professionals of different backgrounds, also experimenting these new and different narratives. What is the challenge of running such a diverse team with different backgrounds? You have a screenwriter that needs to learn new things, has to do and work with a new language. What is your suggestion that more professionals be trained and receive information in that field? Well, that's $1 million question. Well, it's just a question. Well, let me see my crystal ball here. 1 second. Well, I believe that school syllabus is fixed. Usually, it's difficult to change it. We have courses on digital games versus game design. It depends when we work focusing on IT or humanities. I believe that this difference should be non-existent. The borders do not exist, just like Terra said. It's difficult to have these separate boxes today, but beyond that, we see several other professions that came up along this period of time. For example, sound designers, product designers, marketing people that have been required a lot, especially on the sports industry that is growing by leaps and bounds, especially here in Brazil. What we do not have, though, is a course or institution to encompass all of that. Instead of that, we should have a basic structure to allow students to migrate courses so that we would have this possibility of innovation that we do not have today in Brazil. Thank you. Well, just to remind you, we have still another 10 minutes to have your questions, both you who are at home or you present here today at this hall. You can see you have the QR code here. You can send your questions. In your last moments of this first round, I'm going to ask you, how is it possible to disseminate the XR, VR, and other acronyms? Probably many people do not know the concept of XR. What do you suggest so that we can disseminate XR throughout society? Well, I believe we should have something in mind regarding technology. It's not because today this isn't fashionable, is that it is for everyone. We're always going to have niches, and they are going to use a lot this technology, and these niches are not so small. Some of them are bigger, but you have to focus on niche and make this audience loyal. Well, I worked with these people from games, which were basically XR. There was graduation course students that created a game that showed violence against women. With this narrative, basically they were innovating both in terms of narrative, because they came from a public university, from a fringe university in the outskirts of São Paulo, and they had in their narrative something that was not contemplated in the games industry, and they had a professor that was developing XR, and they did this game in XR, which was geared toward women. That was their main target. We did it in university, and this became an innovation space. But when we went on to the market, one of the hurdles we have, or we had to continue with XR, is that a woman who was a victim of violence could come up and ask for help within the app that we were establishing. In order to access certain information, you have to fix the camera in order to open XR. Well, this did not make a lot of sense. We have major women audience, and they were not the evangelists of games and digital area. We have a lot of women that do that, but it's an exception. And women who were in an emergency situation to find a paper to open the app or the game or even this reality in their homes would be difficult for them to access. Most people who have violence against women are these women's own partners. And obviously, if we did that, some of their lives could be at risk. And people say NFT, 90% of the games would have NFT. All of we produce is metaverse. We have this new technology, but we need to know exactly how far these people have access to that. But of course, today there are many cheap equipment. We have those goggles made of cardboard, and children use them in schools, etc. I believe all this is wonderful to expand our audience and this thinking on the fringe, basically for a smaller audience. Doesn't make sense because we see the games worldwide industry for our gamers, because according to New Zoo reports, Latin America is the place where we the fastest growing in terms of number of gamers. So we have to look at those people who do not have access to this technology.
Thank you very much. It's incredible explaining this uses when it works and when it doesn't work. We're now going to the round, second round, 3 minutes each, which is the most important part of SPCine. So if you could sum up, what are the proposals, what agenda SPCine has to focus on from now on, involving several industries or private audiences, public and private. So I'm going to begin with the same order. Tara, you're the first in 3 minutes. I know it's hard, but please try to sum up the agenda for games for the next year, 3 years for the audiovisual industry. Let me try. One of the first issues that Erika and Groove already mentioned is the access. I think there's a lot, since our composition of Latin America have influence on society in terms of organization and fostering activities, we have to have this understanding, as well as in the academia. The public entities have a certain complication for us to be able to advance in a faster way as the market itself advances. And when we talk about inclusion of new people, both in the labor market and skills. One of the things that I see is access. We have a problem in relation to access regarding where these people are potentially in terms of peripheries, and we are a culture of a peripheral culture. It's no use staying in the large centers. We have to take this kind of access somehow to the peripheries. It's not going to have scale. As the iPhones or smartphones, there was no scale. There had to be a large movement to begin manufacturing smartphones in Brazil to make them cheaper, and 3 generations later or 6 generations later, you would be able to have 2-to-1 smartphones here in Brazil. And the smartphones, for many people, for the majority of people that had the first access to the internet, be it prepaid or postpaid, accessing public networks, smartphones were the first. It wasn't the PC or notebooks, telecenters. I'm not the smartphone was an important vector of inclusion in our country. We're changing, we're advancing in technology. Smartphones are going to change to Googles and then brain implants, but we have to be in these places, especially in a world that we think will be decentralized. And the second point, not to extend myself, is training. When we talk about training, we always talk about it. It's necessary to have training, professional training, skill management, and we see that there is, I wouldn't say a resistance, but a lack of humbleness to understand that the professionals, the people in the market, are people that are developing these technologies, that are experimenting and generating new knowledge, and they are looking for at society directly on a daily basis. And much has to be learned from these entities. So CBRX, Collab, other entities and associations that are adding knowledge. We have to listen to these entities somehow, but in a way as to learn. We are developing this now. Abra Games today, we have over 120 studios around Brazil making games every single day. So how to transform this knowledge into a return for a fostering policy? Why do I need a game designer, for example? A game designer is no longer only for games, it's games beyond games. So the game designer has to think that he has a great skill for these new platforms. Level designer, he's going to think beyond gaming and using his experience in all these places. So how do we connect this all together? Who's dealing with this on a daily basis so that we convert this into policies such as FATEX, ETEX, Paula Souza centers in Rio de Janeiro, in Pernambuco, and Amazonas. How can we make this convert into something that we can teach what is going on in the world and not retaining knowledge and using knowledge from 10 years ago? This is the basis, but we have to go from the base up. We change phases in the game. That's a joke, sorry. So now the easy part of making the sum up. I recognize that for SPCine, as there are many Brazils, there are many São Paulos. I think from Capão Redondo to Pinheiros neighborhood, there's a lot. If you put in Parelheiros as well. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. I don't know São Paulo very well, but I think that there is something that is important when we talk about education or training, which is to stimulate not only the consumption, but the production. How we're saying here, there's a lot of knowledge and professions that are converging towards these new scenarios, thinking about new narratives. How is it to increase the repertoire of people? I think about the people that are in school, in middle school, and you have to choose your profession. How can we increase the repertoire of these youngsters to consider this a possibility of a professional? If you own a school, for example, create a grant for people that SPCine can articulate that dialogue with the government, with companies, but that they can bring this diversity of people, of ideas, of of places to the center of actions. This is the innovation that we want to see. This summed up with what Terra said. There are several levels and the solutions are not unique. There is no silver bullet. We have pathways to go through, but one of the important things is to experiment. We don't have many answers about the new things that are coming up. We don't know how this is going to impact us directly. We know that it's going on, it's happening. We live through the revolutions, and we're going to see this further on. But that's why experimenting is so important, and for everyone, for all kinds of people that come from every walks of life, to stimulate and create more inclusive policies. We have to have more people producing than consuming, having people from different places, from different backgrounds, creating their own narratives. We want to see new stories, and we want to experience this in new ways, not only in the traditional way that we are used to. I think there's a lot to think about this. Excellent, great. I have access, training, stimulate production, not only consumption, inclusion, and space for experimenting. I'm writing it down for us to take this ahead. Groove, what do you propose for SPCine? Well, first of all, I agree with what our colleagues have mentioned, the policies of the public policies for investment. And talking to the president of our association, Karine Israel, the issue of access, of having investments, to be able to have access to equipment and resources is essential. But I see something that is very important before all of this, is the coming together of the population with the public sector. I think this is essential, because I see the youngsters, especially from the peripheries, the communities, the outskirts of the city, in a feeling that they they're impotent. They feel impotent. My parents weren't able to do this, my grandparents weren't able to do this, and I'm not going to be able to do this. I have to compete with a person that has money, that has education, and this happened to me. You doubt yourself, you doubt your capacity, and doing things through. So I see many youngsters don't even try due to these issues they face. So first of all, we would have to implement new policies. I would like to congratulate SPCine for their initiatives, the mayor of São Paulo for this wonderful program for attracting audiovisual productions to our city, which is an incredible program, an investment of 40 million reais, and make this happen. Because many people don't even know about this, don't see it, and they think that perhaps the way they're taking is going to lead them nowhere. And these programs have to be a communication programs to attract, and the public sphere has to understand that these youngsters, if they are skilled, if they're going to generate revenue for the country. And I believe that if we work together in this sense, this would be the path to go. Wonderful, excellent. So to give incentive to training, to and communication as well, communication between the population and the public entities. Well, I believe that we can turn things around, as Groovy mentioned. And a practical example that I have seen, I followed a studio during graduation They had some internal problems, and during the pandemic, the person that I was guiding, he was taking on the studio, and we were at Expo Favela. We were one of the 10 projects out of 20,000 projects in Brazil that were selected, and it was Studio Vision Zeriotes and Leonardo Garces, two youngsters from a community in the outskirts of São Paulo. So we can turn this around. How can we do this? I think SPCine has an essential role within the gaming industry, especially with the biddings they have. There are the issues of diversity. This is excellent, but these are actions that many times are very spaced between each other, and I think this has to be intensified. More than that, it's due time that we have to have a game hub in São Paulo. There's an enthusiasm by politicians that they embrace the gaming community, but they embrace the community of players and from games from outside. So how does the gaming doesn't have incentive? And we're talking about public policy for the base of gaming industry in Brazil. So I believe that other initiatives that we see that put very good professionals and gives us great international visibility in Florianópolis with the incentive of the state government, Recife, and other actions that we have seen in Brasilia. But São Paulo, the capital of São Paulo, these issues are placed during the elections and then they go away, they fade away. More than this, in the gaming industry, we have serious problems with taxes, which are extremely high, that have a special category, and this makes it extremely difficult for us to put up new products. Let us go beyond this. High schools, universities, there's a difficulty to have access to internet, even computers, or even having console access and virtual reality access. So I've been teaching for 10 years in an excellent university that takes professionals that win international awards. For example, one-sided, and we never had a console in our university. So these are basic things when we think that the executives have to train their employees to put them in the market, or we expect miracles from teachers that have no way of improving without this equipment. So we have to have a better infrastructure, data infrastructure and connectivity. So what we pay of internet in this country and what we get back is a shame. So I think that SPCine has conditions to help us, and we are going to work together and to take solid things to show the potential that we have. And in this locomotive, which is Brazil, we have an incredible potential here in this country, but we need conditions for this to surface. Thank you, Erica. And SPCine, we are here, we're talking, but this doesn't end here. You can count on us. We thank you all for listening and for the will to develop the gaming and XR industry. So you can count on us for us to together foster and discover the ways that we can go. I have some question here, the questions that you sent in through WhatsApp. Then we have a round of Q&A, and I'm going to start with Georgie. Groovy, what is an XR production from the idea to the technical part? Wow, I have to sum that up in 1 minute. Well, I got a little mixed up. Well, everything begins on the sketches on paper. I don't see that it's not too different than an audiovisual production. Of course, there are several other processes, but it's very complex to talk about an XR production in 1 minute. Well, we actually have 15 minutes, so one answer each. You can exceed your minute. Okay, I think an XR production, part of the concepts, starts with the concepts, and then blockage, characters, what is going to be used. It's a process of approval. You can't do this, just do the product and hand it in. It has to go through several approval steps. And it's a process that is quite complex. Thus, the difficulty of having professionals that will do this and are skilled to do this. I think the main thing is to invest in these professionals, and so that we are able to have a production chain. The production chain of XR involves several professionals. It's difficult to sum up, but perhaps, Groovy, another way to interpret this as what kind of professionals are involved in an XR production. You can mention some kinds of professionals. How does this work? How does the team work? Well, all the professionals from audiovisual end up being involved. The developers, the devs, the programmers are essential for this process. So I see that most of the professionals in the TV and movies have a place in this production. In Rio TC, several professionals sought me, including audio professionals, people that are in this business for a long time. They wondered, how can I participate? How can I enter this market? So showing these people that it's a matter of adaptation. Everything that he has learned, all the baggage that he has, the cultural baggage and the skills to adapt to these new devices, the new programming ways, know the endings, but in general terms, most of the audiovisual professionals fit here. So you can see that there's a lot of work. Tara, Marcio Lima, are you here? Oh, here is Marcio Lima. Marcio would like to know what is the importance, thank you for your participation, Marcio, what is the importance of dubbing in games and how inclusive can it be? A good question. We passed through a period for those who were gamers 20 years ago, thought that dubbing was very poor at the time because there was no understanding at that time that the game translated into Portuguese with these texts in Portuguese and with the dialogues and so on. They had to be translated into Portuguese. It was a subproduct. It was just done because it had to be done. It wasn't as valued as it is today, and there wasn't a something that you could form, for example, for dubbing of games that would be appropriate for the means. Dubbing a game is not the same as dubbing a movie. For example, the script is not on Word, it's in Excel. So many things that you have to plan in lines, narratives. If you do this, this happens. If you do that, the other thing happens. So if you have a dialogue, this character has to have a certain behavior, and you have to record this. So to translate a game is no easy task. There wasn't this kind of skill before, but for many years lots of investments have been made for dubbing for gaming, and the qualification of the professionals that have great dubbing skills. Not necessarily they will adapt to dubbing games. It's much more exhausting, it takes much more time, and sometimes in a translation you have to cut out some parts because dubbing will have to opt as for the text if you have a triple way, for example. And there's the difficulty of when you are translating a low-budget game, this translation ends up being your last priority. That's why many times people go after publishers to be able to translate, to distribute to more platforms. But I can answer quickly as a consumer. I see dubbing infinitely better now for games, with very professional dubbers. And as a game producer, it is a great challenge to have good translation for the game if you don't have the funds for it. So this is an idea. Localization and translation and localization is something that we could have as a goal here. It's going to have, it's going to help a Brazilian game can be translated and be exported to reach a larger audience. It increases access, and nothing better than our mother tongue when we are inside an immersive experience. Simone can help answer. Yes, localization and translation has the thing that when we talk about localization, why didn't you use the term only dubbing? Localization is not only translation. You bring this the translation into this new culture. In TV and cinema, when you're translating, Disney uses localization, for example. They end up using the concept of localization is trying to bring to the end culture expressions that are local. So the games don't have a way only to translate, because you would lose. You can't translate an American joke, for example, if you don't bring it into a context of Brazil. The context is also in the 3D image that you put up in your level, in your scene, whatever, that it doesn't correspond. So it's not only a localization of audio, it's the or the translation of a text. Localization is the set that you bring to the understanding of the local language. Thank you very much for your participation. And now, Sue, there are people that want to know about some success examples of Preta Lab projects. Well, that's a fun question. How do we measure success? The Preta Lab is a success. 5 years of projects. We have been looking about gender and race in the technology realm. I think it's worth saying that people don't understand very well what we do. So if we want to try and explain ourselves, it wouldn't be ourselves. We are divided into 3 axes, where we have a network of over 600 women that work with technology in different areas. And we have to say that we don't understand technology only as IT or engineering, but there are data scientists, audiovisual, the photographers, journalists, and this is the most important pillar for Preta Lab, the core network that began in 2017. And today, since 2020, we systematically do training in programming. We have an open call for all black women in Brazil who are interested. Of course, we can't hire them all, but we have this open call for a course that is the people that want to go into technology. This network is demanding this from us for quite some time. And the third pillar, that is consulting and more inclusive processes within our institutions, companies, and organizations. I wanted to have said a very cool game that is called Contos de Fá, which is from Coco de Umbigada from Olinda, which is a cultural point that started the development of games looking at the Afro culture. And I thought it was brilliant when I got to know about this project. There was a beta version that was available, but the idea of taking an ancestral story and bringing this to a contemporary language. And Contos de Fá is something that was very interesting because they thought about technology with ancestrality. Well, thank you for pointing out this project. And last but not least, I'm going to call Victor later on. We'll have another panel soon. And statistically, the bids for gamings are helping the gaming industry. Yes, definitely. And with the Ancine, the ending of the Ministry of Culture, the gaming industry was extremely impacted, and at least we have some ways out. Because we have the bias of IT, which is an industry that hasn't stopped, and the gaming industry, the consumption, even during this crisis that we're going through due to the pandemic, we had an increase in our industry. But the call for bids are opening once again, but still in small numbers for the potential that we have here in Brazil. There is a high rate of competition, and sometimes it's difficult from people from the industry to compete due to the requirements in these bids. You have to fill in a lot and file a lot of documentations, and many studios are not formal. They are in their initial investments, especially for the startups, for gaming industry. I think it's essential to think more about this. Of course, without leaving out the people that already have experience in the market, and because many times they need to earn more. Because if we think 200,000 reais seems to be a lot of money, but to develop something, you have to the value that you have for a developer today, and he is being taken by the foreign market, our industry is not able to retain talent here. So there's a cost to keep a team that these biddings so this is something that has to be considered. Well, I would like to thank in the name of SPCine, Sil, Groove, Erica, Terra, thank you very much. Thank you. If you'd like to thank everyone. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to invite you, for those who want to know about gaming, there's an event 2 months from now, which is big, and I would like to invite you all to get to know it. Yes, sponsored by SPCine. I wanted to speak quickly, that's why I did mention. Victor is coming in. I would like to thank you all. I've learned a lot in this panel, so that we can, I hope that we can continue with this conversation in more inclusive terms. I would also like to thank, and I'd like to correct myself. I talked about the production, and the director is Bárbara Magalhães. The name was wrong. And to say that this is a great example of integration of XR with audiovisual, because before we thought about productions to produce a record, a vinyl record, we didn't think about this anymore. We thought about the video clips. One thing was no longer dependent from the other. So the media plans didn't contemplate our XR. Today I'm able to deliver in this immersive environment, the web environment, so I believe that this is going to be amplified, and this production is going to be a great example for this. Thank you very much. I thank you all very much. I thank you for the invitation, the participation of our colleagues here. I see many faces that I know, and I am at your disposal for further exchanges with our colleagues, because everyone together will win. Just one last thing. We have 1,010, our association XRBR. We're totally open to talk to SPCine, to the private sector, to the public sector, so that we can put these ideas into practice. We are open to conversations. That's what I was going to say. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, SPCine, and thank you all to all our guests here. Thank you. Now, Victor. Thank you, Simone. Thank you all the panel members. It was great to look at all the possibilities that we have to build an agenda for our industry. We will have our next panel in a few minutes. Thank you very much.